With our expanded schema complete, we can now create a list of mutate operations that we'll send to the Google Ads server to create our PMax campaign. If you've looked at any of our existing Performance Max code samples before, this should look somewhat familiar. It's almost like a deconstructed version of those examples. For each campaign, we'll return a list of mutate operations, which includes the campaign budget operation, campaign operation, campaign conversion goal operations, and asset group operations. Note that the asset group operations list includes the operations that create our asset group, new assets, asset group assets, and asset group signals for each asset group. We include all of those together to guarantee a valid order of operations in the overall request. As we look at each one of these methods to create our operations, you'll see why the pre-processing step is so useful. In the create campaign budget operation method, we create a mutate operation like we would for any other resource. What's nice here is that every field we assign is either a field from our expanded schema or a constant value that is required for PMax campaigns, such as the budget delivery method, which must always be standard, and explicitly shared, which must always be false. In addition, we've separated the logic that creates the resource names from the logic that creates our operations, which you'll see throughout. We could have taken the pre-processing step even further and just created dictionaries that reflect the full underlying structure of each resource as defined by the protos. And if you take this approach, you can even leverage helper methods in the Google Ads API Python client library that convert a dictionary directly into a resource. The create campaign operation method has a similar flow. We either set the fields from the schema object or use the required value, such as the advertising channel type, which is always Performance Max. The only difference here is that you have to follow this pattern to set the bidding strategy and/or target ROAS because of how that field is structured. In addition, we can set some optional fields and the shopping setting field for retail campaigns if it's provided. I'm not going to go into great detail for the create conversion goal operations method because we have an existing video that walks through this code flow. But at a high level, we're retrieving all the customer level goals and category and origin pairs. We'll loop through those as well as our list of goals, and for any category and origin pairs that are in both lists, we'll create a campaign conversion goal with the biddable field set to true. For all others, we'll do the same, but with biddable set to false. Finally, let's look at the method that creates all of the asset group and related operations. This parent method simply loops through each asset group and adds the operations for each one to a list that we'll return. The method to create the operations for an individual asset group is also fairly straightforward. We create a mutate operation for the asset group operation by setting the fields from our schema. Then we'll create operations for each of our assets, asset group assets, and asset group signals, and then return the full list. And also asset group listing group filters for retail campaigns, but as I said earlier, I'm not going to get into that. Again, all these additional methods do is iterate through each item in the schema, then set the fields on the Google Ads object from the corresponding object in the schema. Here is the create asset group asset operations method and the create asset group signal operations method.